Officers on the pursuit call. Suspect vehicle was last seen heading north near the power station. Containment will be set up ahead of his last known direction of travel. This call is still code 6. Handle on TAC 3.
Alright guys, we are back at it again. I'm just making this video. It's going to be kind of just the whole thing combined of all the stuff that I was talking about at the end of the last video. I'm starting with this. I did decide to keep this layout just because of the fact that it's labeled. Let me show you the one that I was going to go to. It's basically the same thing. It's just a little more clean, or a little cleaner. Here it is. This was the setup I was going to go to, where you can kind of see. There you go. You can see the top is the battery and then all the little terminals at the bottom. It's the same thing on that one. It's just, like I said, that one's labeled. And if I want to, I can label the additional ones that I add as well. And so, I'm going to keep that. I got some self-tapping screws. I'm going to screw on this half because the bolt that the battery terminal goes straight through interferes with this, unless I get it in that hole maybe. But yeah, so I'm gonna just screw that on. This one was not labeled, but it goes straight to the fuse box battery plus power. So I'm gonna shorten this wire because it doesn't need to be this long, and then make an official mount for that to that, and then I can put the door card back over here and be done with this area and move on to the gauge wiring. Alright, didn't really want to record that just because it's not too special to look at, but we got this thing hard mounted in here. Everything's cool. I went ahead and made some connections better than just wrapping wire around, soldering them and all that stuff. Everything is tied, zip tied in place, so it won't be rubbing or vibrating too much. Even the battery cable, which I will tie the battery cable across the side as well. So yeah, we're looking pretty good on this for now. So I could just go ahead and put the panel back on it, but I'm gonna wait to put the panel in the back seat back in here. But that was all that I need to do back here. So we're gonna move on to rewiring the gauges. Now the gauges, of course, are wired incorrectly. Well, actually the air fuel gauge is wired incorrectly. I have that one set to get straight power. So this white wire that connects to this red one that goes to that's straight battery plus off the terminal. So I'm gonna take this wire and move it to match the wire that I have the oil gauge running. The oil gauge is wired correctly. The oil gauge is using a wire that's over here somewhere that is 12 volts with the ignition on. So I'll be switching that, and I'll also be tucking a lot of this stuff back behind. All of that extra wire down there is going to disappear, and all this stuff will be rewired and stuff. I'm not sure what this goes to, but yeah, basically after I do this rewiring, everything loose up top is going to be gone, or not gone, but tucked away, hidden as well. So let's knock that out. The wiring stuff I'm not gonna film, just because you guys know how wiring can be. So we'll just go from the before to the after. And just like that, it may have been a half a second to you, but it was a couple hours for me. We got everything cleared up. I can't really tell too much of a difference because I've been working on this for hours, but you guys probably can. I know I tied some stuff down up in here to free up space so that eventually I can do like a block plate or something like that once everything is good. This is the cable for the ECU to the computer, so I didn't really want to tie that away or anything like that. But all the gauges are properly wired, they're properly connected. I got them secured all around, out of the way. Nothing in the, let's get some light down here. Nothing in the footwell that I can run into with my feet on both sides. Everything's kind of tucked up out the way. I also routed the GPS module for the Haltouch GPS unit that Wiring Specialties uses as a speed sensor input. So that'll be going up there. I didn't stick it because I don't know what I'm gonna do with this dash, but that's there as well. And we're good to go as far as the wiring. The only thing that I would add would probably be to just clamp these down, but that's neither here nor there for now. And I already showed you guys the wiring back there, so that's gonna be it as far as wiring. Next thing on the list is to start connecting this power steering rack and tie rods, but we're gonna have to do a makeshift alignment, and so that's next, guys. So you would have seen me do the wiring. This is another day. I started bleeding the brakes, and I'm currently bleeding the clutch. Bleeding the brakes was working really well. This side is pretty good. The other side was, getting through it, but I realized that I have a leak. My master cylinder on that second one, right about here, the threads between this and the cylinder itself are not sealing, and it's causing brake fluid to leak. So I'm probably gonna have to get a new 300ZX master cylinder and redo all of that. So I stopped trying to bleed the brakes for that exact reason. And it also reminded me that I need to get a heat shield, because if it leaks from there, my downpipe is right there, and that's gonna catch fire if it touches that downpipe. So that's two things. So I'll have to get a 300ZX master cylinder to replace this one, and the heat shield for the S14, the one that kind of goes like that. Yeah. So far bleeding the clutch has been cool. No issues there. I actually just pressurized it. So if you guys want to see what that's looking like, here, I'll use that as an angle. And we're getting there, slowly but surely. So, as for today, I was planning on bleeding the front brakes, bleeding the clutch, then putting the car on the ground, lifting it up from the back to bleed the back brakes, and put Loctite on the driveshaft bolts. But since I can't bleed the brakes until I replace the master cylinder, I am going to be leaving the car up. There's no point in dropping it to raise that in, to drop it to raise this in. So, and then drop it and raise it again. So today will just be bleed the clutch and get up out of here. So as far as things on my list to buy, master cylinder, heat shield, and R32 engine coolant temperature sensor. Other thing is the parasitic drain that's on this car. Ever since this battery's been charged, it's like twice as strong. I don't know what it is that's on, because everything that would be obvious if it was still on is not on. Like all the windows and all that stuff, those are off. Those aren't really doing their thing. All the lights and stuff, those are off when they're off. All of the engine functions and everything that I've put in with the swap, those are on when the ignition is on. All the aftermarket lights that I put in, those are wired to a switch for a reason, and those switches are off. So it's got to be just like one random wire that's got power and ground somewhere that's not doing anything at all, and I don't really know how to go about finding that. I'm not really now that good with parasitic draw if it's not something obvious like a light or something with a motor in it or something like that. So that's another thing I'm gonna have to figure out, but that's part of the checklist. We got the brakes, we got the ECT, we got the parasitic drain, and drive shaft bolts. After we do all that, then it'll be just making this thing legal. Tail lights, headlights, and all that stuff. So let's get back to it. Second, third, fourth, All right. So it looks like we got everything installed. While I was letting the coolant drain out of the upper hose, I did start bleeding the brakes. I mean, I didn't really do too much, but it looks like we did fix the issue. I didn't notice any leaks coming from these fittings, and this brake is bleeding just fine, so we might be good on that. The only other thing to test is to see if this new coolant temperature sensor is not leaking and works. As far as it working, I'm not too concerned about that one. I mean, yeah, it's a brand new sensor, and yes, it does need to work, but I was more concerned about the leak. So what I didn't do on the first one was I didn't put any Teflon tape on it. I did put Teflon tape on the new one, so hopefully that fixes it. If not, it's pretty easy to get into. Both of these are pretty easy installs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and cut the car on, let it idle, and see if coolant is leaking from this same area. And if it isn't, then I will go ahead and bleed all the brakes in the front. Finally put the car back on the ground, lift up the back, bleed the brakes in the rear, Loctite the drive shaft bolts, and we can see if this thing moves under its own power after that. So my excitement is definitely building. Let's hope that this works. Well, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but it does not look like I'm going to be able to get this thing started today. And it's not nothing with the engine or anything like that. It's just whatever is going on with the wiring, whatever's happening with the battery, and whatever wire it is that's in this car that's hot, it is preventing me from starting the car. Not in a, not in a I can't get in and turn the key way, but like there is something inside this car that is connected from the battery straight to ground. So as soon as I connect the negative cable, we have all the sparks and all that stuff, and the negative cable gets extremely hot if you leave it there for a long amount of time. And I do not have the tools necessary, right now at least, to find that. I do have an idea on how I will find that, but I don't have the tool that I'm going to be renting to take care of that. So as of right now, there is no way that I will know if this coolant temp sensor not only works, but is not leaking. However, the brake master cylinder replacement, that is good. So what I am going to do is just bleed all the brakes and Loctite the drive shaft bolts. That way I can have the car seated on the ground, and the only thing left to address as far as my knowledge would be this battery thing. In which case, worst scenario, I can just send it to Sound Performance and have them take care of it. Or if I have the time, I can rent the tool, cross my fingers, and hope that I can find it on my own. It'll be one or the other. So it'll be I'll either find it or they will find it when I send this car off for a dyno. And that'll be that. But it does not look like I'm going to be able to confirm whether it can move under its own power normally today. I did confirm that when I almost killed myself by leaving it in first gear and starting the car, and it jolted forward a little bit, but I have not driven it or anything like that. So that's a bit of a bummer, but at least the one big thing that I was trying to fix today is taken care of, which is the brakes. So all I'm gonna do now is just bleed them. I'm gonna save you guys the trouble of seeing that, because everybody should know how to bleed brakes. If you want to know how I installed the master cylinder, I do have a separate video on my YouTube channel for the first time I did the 300ZX master cylinder. And if you want to know how to transfer the reservoir, it literally just pops out. You just pull it out. It takes a little bit of effort because these rubber seals hold it in pretty tight, but you pull it out, pop the reservoir in the new one, and you're good to go. So that is that. We'll just come back once all these lines are bled. All right, guys, I'm gonna wrap it up here. Everything's taken care of. The brakes are all bled. So far, the pedal is extremely firm, but I don't know how it's actually gonna feel until the engine's running and I can feel it with the brake booster doing its thing. Engine coolant temperature sensor is installed. Don't know if it's leaking or not since the car won't start, so that's two things to confirm, but all the brakes are bled. The tie rod ends are connected to the steering rack is connected to the what are those, the hubs, the control arms, the steering rack is connected to the wheels. The drive shaft bolts have been Loctited. That's why the car is actually on the ground now and everything's on it. So as far as right now, there's not too much left to do except for figure out what's going on with this battery and possibly the wiring. And then once that is solved, it's dyno day. I know I'm not going to be doing that today, and I actually don't know when I will be doing that. So I'm going to end the video here and leave it at that for now, because technically speaking, I don't know if I will do it myself or if I will have Sound Performance do it, like I said. So the next video will either be a dyno day video or it will be a finding my battery drain attempt 1, I guess, video. It's gonna be one or the other, and that'll be that. But we are good to go. I'm actually getting excited. I mean, the car looks good, even though it's still incomplete. The front end's not on it and all that other stuff, but we've come a long way. And it's also going to be a little minute in between the videos just because with my new work schedule being deployed and all that other stuff, like I'm going to be in Houston for, I mean not Houston, I'm be in Dallas next Tuesday for 10 days. So I won't even see this thing until I come back, and then I'll only be off for 4 days, and then I might get deployed again to a different state, or who knows. So work schedule and all that stuff is kind of weird. Just bear with me, guys. I mean, at least we don't have much to do on this one. I did call Sound Performance, and I do have an appointment, so we are on the waiting list for that. But when I called them, the first thing they said was that they don't have any availability till September. But they also told me to call back once I have the new parts on the car, just in case somebody cancels, because they have cancellations all the time. So what I think I'm going to do as far as dyno day is I'm going to save up maybe a little bit over $1,000 or so, just to prepare myself for the dyno day, and then I'll give them a call to see if I can drop the car off over there and get all this stuff taken care of, because I am ready to be done with the drivetrain and start making it. I mean, the car looks good at certain angles, but I'm ready to be done with the drivetrain and like really button up the exterior, get the side skirts going, get the fenders properly mounted, the front end properly mounted, the headlights built and all that stuff, finish the tail lights, tighten up the front end, do the secondary over fenders to make this fitment better, get me a decent back bumper, or cut this one and have a decent exhaust setup, kind of similar to the FRS dual tip exhaust ones. Have the tail light good, maybe a diffuser, maybe not. Get my roof spoiler on, and then respray the whole thing, carbon skin the trunk. Like, I got a bunch of things I want to do to the exterior. I know this isn't the end goal by any means, but it does look cool in certain aspects. So with that, I'm gonna just say like, comment, subscribe, follow the build, and till next time, guys.